Do you feel that every time you want to have a honest conversation with your avoidant partner, they shut down? And what if I tell you that actually it's not about how much you can invest? It's not about the effort you're putting in. What if you could just use empathy to unlock their fear of commitment, their fear of intimacy? My name is Alexis Friedlander. I'm a relationship therapist based in London. I used to be dismissive avoidant. And my videos are here to help you understand what's going on and also give you the clues and insights on what you should be doing to build the right relationship. And in this video, I'm going to share with you 3 simple things that you can implement should you want your partner, your avoidant partner, to open up. I'll explain everything after the jingle. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, or my old self, my avoidant self. For many years, this is how I saw myself. Someone strong, kind of a warrior with no weaknesses, who, again, this image of someone who doesn't need anyone in his life. And this image is very interesting because there's something behind the mask. There's something hidden inside. There's an inner child actually reinforcing this image or this idea of, I need to be detached. Right? It's the only way for me to feel safe. It's the only way for me not to be disappointed. Because, for example, when I was younger, I wanted to be loved, but I was also very scared to disappoint. Very scared to be judged. And the way I would deal with my lacking confidence is about, okay, if I don't invest, if I don't put myself, they're not going to discover who I am really. And this is where you also have this fear of vulnerability. If they really discover who I am, they will judge me. They will make fun of me, right? And so there's usually this fear, those insecurities that make you create this armor, create this mask, and create this idea of being dismissive avoidant. And it's also around the fear of intimacy. I need distance between myself and the others. Because intimacy is about vulnerability. Intimacy is about being close to someone. If you're not close to anyone, you can't suffer. They can't hurt you, right? So you always have this shield, this armor, this mask. But remember this image, because behind all those smoke screens that we create as avoidant, there's an inner child. A child that's not healed, a child that just needs to be or wants to be loved, who wants to be reassured, who wants to be taught how to connect. Because the connection is scary, it's daunting. And this is why when you're dismissive avoidant, you create this Copic Mechanism of putting everyone at an arm's length. So that's the dilemma for avoidant. On one end, every human being is hardwired to be attached to a primary attachment figure. So when you're little, when you're a kid, it's with your caregiver, with your parents, and when you're adult, it's with your partner. And so there's this dilemma of, I want to be in a relationship, I want to love, I want to be loved. But I need to suppress this need because that love implies connection, intimacy, vulnerability. And this quote is something that I've heard from a client whose ex was telling her, I'm miserable, but I can't give you what I want, what you want. And it doesn't make sense when you have a secure attachment style, when you have an anxious attachment style. If you're miserable, if you suffer from this situation, why don't you work on this? Why don't you try to address this? There's often this element of, I don't want to give up on the relationship, but they are already giving up. The first bump in the road, the first sort of friction in the relationship, they walk away. They disappear, they disengage. And this is what we need to try to address. I'm the proof that you can heal your attachment wounds if you have an avoidant attachment style. So it's not a question of whether they can do it. It's finding the right platform for them to work on themselves. And I'll explain in a second that empathy, pragmatic empathy, is the right way to make your avoidant partner open up, to make them realize that actually it's not that difficult to connect with someone, to make them realize that actually being in a relationship doesn't have to be either complex, difficult. It doesn't mean that they need to forget about their independence. It's actually, again, what we are trying to do is to address this fear, tame the fear. If you're watching this and wondering if you have any chance of getting back with your ex, or even if it's the right thing to do, I've created a free assessment that gives you clarity. It's based on attachment science, and it will show you whether your ex is still emotionally engaged, if reconnection is possible, and how ready you are mentally and emotionally. What you have to do is just answer a few questions, and you'll get a personalized breakdown within 2 minutes. You can find the link of this assessment below in the description. So as partner, you can try to find the cracks in the walls. Let me share with you 3 ways to do it. The first one is around validation. Most people, when they're in a relationship with an avoidant, or when they're in a relationship, broadly speaking, when they feel triggered, when they're upset, they will accuse, they will judge, they will point finger at their partner. This is counterproductive and will actually fuel the fire, actually reinforce the self-belief of avoidant partner of, well, it's too much. It's too complex to be in a relationship. You know, if I do something wrong, or I always do something wrong, right? So I used to think that a lot when I was younger. My partners would complain because I didn't invest, because I was not there, I was not consistent. And I would always default to, well, I'm not good enough. I can't give you what you want, right? Because I felt judged. And anytime I would make an effort, I would sort of hesitate because I was so scared of the outcome. So one way to address this is to shift to stop shutting me out. Don't do this, don't do that. To more of a, this is my personal experience. This is how I function. I'm giving you the user manual of the relationship. Remember, and I think throughout this video, remember this image of that soldier, of that warrior with that inner child. Your job is to talk to that inner child, to teach them what it means to be in a relationship. Because the way we perceive or we apprehend relationship is not the right way. It's an insecure way of dealing with relationships. And so the right way is to, when you need space, I notice I get worried. You're not accusing, you say like, this is my experience. This is my feeling. I feel like this. And just I'm just letting you know, this is what happens on my side. This type of communication works. We can actually use it in the workplace, but yours works really well when you're in an intimate relationship. Because when you're sharing your feelings, and you're not pointing fingers, you're not accusing, you're not judging, you are, in a way, tapping into a natural empathetic response. Even avoidant people can be empathetic. So there are 2 different things. And I think every human being, unless you're a psychopath, we are empathetic people. We can understand the clues of when people suffer, and especially if it's someone you love, you will pay attention. Okay, so it's shifting from I'm being judged. I always do something wrong. I'm not capable. To my partner is suffering. And maybe I can do something about it. Okay, so you name the experience, but that doesn't mean you excuse the behavior. Okay, at the end of the day, you need to ensure that your needs are met. You need to ensure that this person understands his role in the relationship, takes accountability. The point is not to say amen to whatever they say, to please them. The point is just to diffuse the tension and let them understand the consequences of their action. So it's just a question of redirecting the flow rather than attacking straight on. When you feel seen, when you feel understood, automatically the cortisol level drops. So your stress level will drop. And this is where, and that works with whether you're anxious, avoidant, or secure, when we feel understood and loved, that's how you build empathy, people start to be open. People start to connect. We have this desire to connect. Again, I'm making this for avoidant if you're dealing with an avoidant partner. So that's one thing, one lever you can action should you want to break that wall or go through the cracks. The second way is what I call optionality. Your job is to avoid a dynamic where you put a lot of pressure on your partner. Of course, you need answers, and as we discussed, you have needs that need to be met. But the point is, how can we get there? Be strategic about how we get there. If you put a lot of pressure on your partner, what will happen? They will withdraw, they will disappear, they will pull back. When you give options, you actually increases your chances of them to connect. And I call that the control loss trigger, right? If you're forcing me to do something, I'll be triggered because I'm going to lose my independence. I'm an avoidant person. I want to do my own thing. I don't want to compromise. I don't want to lose my identity, etc., etc. If you're forcing me to do something, I might say yes, but I will strongly feel no, and it would be the way I would behave, the way I would respond would be very negative. I used to do this to do this kind of things in the past because it's very interesting because at the same time I was avoidant, I was also a people pleaser because I wanted to be loved. And so I would say yes, even though I felt no, and wait for many weeks up until a point where, as it actually from the get-go never worked for me, would disappear, would try to cancel. And this is why you find strategies to just make sure that you don't disappoint your partner, but at the same time get what you want. Obviously not a very toxic way to deal with relationships. So one way, I'm just giving you examples, and if you want more examples, let me know in the comment section, and I will probably create some working sheets. There are also examples in the book that I published at the this year. So instead of we have to talk tonight, time bounded, pressure on this is now, this is the talk, and we're gonna have a difficult conversation. Just like the talk, just say talk to an avoidant, they will run away. Reframe it to, could we talk this evening or tomorrow? Would be better. Or next week or whenever. Again, you give them options. You don't try to corner them. Remember that anytime you're in that situation, if they choose something, they feel empowered, they feel in control, right? And that's way better because in that sense, they will go in that meeting, in that date, etc., more positively than if they feel cornered, right? In a kind of the little of like crossing their arms, like, what do you want, right? And you start the conversation regardless of what you do, regardless of what you say, it's not going to end well. Okay, so that's second element is about optionality. It could be optionality about the timing, optionality about the place. Again, it's the idea of making them feel in control throughout the process. And the third one is about the low stakes contact. So when you have an anxious attachment style, when you have a secure attachment style, and you want to repair, and you want to build a relationship, you want clarity, right? And I'm not dismissing that you should need clarity. The problem is how you get that clarity. And the problem is a lot of people, because they are upset, because they are tired, they feel that they are playing game, they would, again, put a lot of pressure in, we need a big talk about who we are, or about where we are in our relationship, about our future. We need to talk now. And again, the point is to de-escalate things, to reduce the stake and slowly, because again, remember this little inner child is scared of those big conversations because it's not the conversations we had when we were a kid, right? We would avoid, like the plague, this kind of conversation. I would run back to my bedroom, pretend to sleep instead of having a difficult conversation about my homework, for example. So when someone comes to me and say, we need to talk, this is very triggering. And we need to talk about the future. It's also triggering because this element of future is very difficult to apprehend for avoidant people, because there's this element of commitment. So it's about like, okay, step by step. Maybe we're talking about one thing. Maybe we're talking about next week. Maybe we're talking about holiday plans. Maybe and just say we're going to discuss about one thing that I feel we need to discuss more than there's a big sort of a Bible of things I want to discuss with you. I want to confront you on those things. So as I said, remember that we have limited bandwidth to digest those information. We can, and actually if that person can't even handle one element, if you use active nonviolent communication, if you use those 3 strategies and your partner is not responding well, then that's a sign that this person might not be the right person or not ready to invest in the relationship. My experience is that, and not only mine, but also my clients, when you have feelings for someone, when you are older than 20, then at some stage you start to realize and reflect on your relationships and sort of compare what you want, what you're doing, and see that there's a discrepancy. And you start acting, thinking, okay, if I want to make this person happy that I care about, what can I do? How can I take responsibility and accountability to overcome my insecurities? So that's what I discussed before. This mental shift of vulnerability is not something scary. I shouldn't shy away from vulnerability. And actually, by experiencing vulnerability from my partner, I feel more connected. And I enjoyed feeling more connected because it's something kind of new. Because the relationships I had with my parents, for example, might have been very superficial. So of course, there's a fear of the unknown, right? We're usually scared of what we don't know. But as soon as we get exposed to this new reality, and we're doing it in the right way, then we see the upside. Then this thing that is unfamiliar becomes familiar, becomes attractive. And this relationship becomes the new framework, the secure framework, the ideal relationship. Because obviously, an avoidant partner would consider a relationship as something difficult, as something that represents a lot of conflict, something that requires a lot of effort or things that they can't give. Whereas like actually, if you are transparent about your feelings, being a role model in a way on what could be a secure relationship, then they will start changing the way they do things. Okay, because obviously you can only change the pattern if you realize that this pattern is not working for you. Okay, and for me, the realization is like there's something missing. And I see people committing to relationships, getting married. Why is it so hard for me? What's going on? What can I change? And you start again comparing, because if you're dating someone secure and you're avoidant, you in a way envy them. Let me explain. Let me give you an example, a very simplistic example. Let's say you have a very toxic family and you're dating someone who has the perfect family. You will start wondering, okay, hold on. I'm starting to operate and having some patterns because of the familiarity, because of my upbringing, of what was a relationship, to this new role model family. So of course, there's a no-brainer. I want to be like these people. I want to connect like these people. So I'm taking a very extreme example, but again, it's the idea of actually, as soon as I'm clear and I can visualize how things could be, rather than how things have always been, then we take action. Then we take accountability. Then we feel, let's do something about it. Let's finally design and decide the relationship that we deserve. And as I said, who do I want to be? I have kids. And so I love my father and he's an amazing father. But now that when I decided to have kids, I was like, what are the things And not a lot of people do this sort of reflection. What are the things that I love, that I admire, that I want to take with me, that I inherited from my father? And what are the things that I don't want to do as a dad? So, for example, one thing is that my dad was really hardworking, working long hours, not always around. And so for me, being around my kids, picking them up from school is very important. And that's why I apologize in advance. I have very limited availability sometimes because I need to pick up my kids at 3 p.m. In the afternoon in the UK. But again, there are all other elements of teaching them things that I had with my father, of like doing activities, skiing, tennis, etc., that I reproduced. I'm not saying that my father did only bad things, but it's just like cherry picking what you need and what you want. And it's the same in relationship. When you see someone operating in a certain way, respectful, vulnerable, you simply want to copy them, right? And you stop thinking like, oh, they're too emotional. Oh. No, you start like, because you care about this person, because you have feelings for this person, you start thinking, maybe there's something I should be doing. Maybe there's something I should stop doing. And this is where the journey starts for an avoidant, facing past trauma, reflecting on the emotional baggage. So for avoidant, it's more around naming the emotions. So I remember I was like, when I started therapy, yeah, I'm happy, sad. That's it. And so it's like about the ability to name things, to find the subtle elements of how we feel and how we are connected. Because dismissive avoidant, yes, they have emotions, but they dismiss those emotions. They think that by dismissing those emotions, I'm stronger. I'm the warrior, right? I'm the very strong, independent person, figure that I want to reproduce. Then you start learning about being authentic. You learn that actually being authentic has more upsides than downsides. This is how you connect with people. This is how you create better relationships. So in the past, I would have 3,000 friends on Facebook. Didn't mean anything. Would I go for a coffee with any of them? No. I would just like hang out, partying with them. And this is where I realized, like, hold on, this is not necessarily what I want. I'm a grown-up, and maybe I should have more intimate relationship in the sense of deeper relationship with my friends. And I remember I have one of my best friends. He's very secure. He's the one who actually showed me, not by coaching me on this, but I realized he had this ability to connect, to ask me questions about my personal life, about my fears. And I realized being on the receiver end, thinking, that feels nice. And I want to do this again with other people. And this is where I started to sort of experiment new things with my friends. And now I don't have 3,000 friends, but I have very good friends. And this is also where you realize, okay, hold on, maybe I need help. So I went through therapy for years. Was way longer than it should have been. Because the problem with therapy is sometimes you start, you never know when it ends. There's a lot of whys, you open a lot of doors, but therapists sometimes are not very trained to close the doors and help you move forward. But that's another question. But that's a journey, right? And you can be part of the journey, not by being their therapist, but being an enabler on their journey, a role model, okay? You're not the one who needs to heal their trauma, to help them with emotional regulation. Your job as a partner is to create the right dynamic, to make them feel safe, to make you feel safe in this relationship. So if you're dating an avoidant, remember validation, optionality, low stakes. And as I said before, it's kind of being the role model. You're not replacing their therapist, their shrink. But that doesn't mean that you should never have any boundaries. Because like, I'm conscious that by saying all of this, sharing those tips, you feel like, oh, it's all about them. And what about me, right? What can I do? How can I ensure that I don't lose myself in this relationship? And it is very important to be clear. So if you have an anxious attachment style, you cannot be happy with an avoidant partner if you don't do the work yourself as well. They need to do the work, you need to do the work. To find that balance, this interdependence, rather than codependency in your relationship. And so it's about using this, what I call pragmatic empathy, of learning who you are, learning your insecurities, working on those insecurities, being able to express this world view to your partner and understand also their worldview. Once you create that secure base, once you create that relationship, things are different. Does it mean you will always end up happy with this person? Does it mean that this will fix everything? Not always. No, because it also depends on people's ability to change how they do things. And if your partner is very fixed in their mindset, it's not going to work out. So it's very important for you, and it's around this element of boundary, to make sure that, yes, you use the right communication. Yes, you understand where you need to stop and how to manage their triggers. But it's also about, okay, what are they doing? Because if you're the only one investing in the relationship, that's called a one-sided relationship. And that's not a good relationship to be in. So it's very important for you to also recognize this element. Yes, avoidance can change. Yes, with pragmatic empathy, you will create a better relationship. Yes, you have a role and responsibility. For instance, if you're watching this after a breakup, maybe your ex broke up with you, but there's some instances where you could change things. You can learn, you can improve. You're watching this video, so you're learning. But again, your job stops at some stage. And it's about assessing whether this partner is doing the work, the same way I did the work. And again, avoidance can change. I have cases of clients where their ex-partners worked on themselves. So it's not a question of whether. It could happen. It might happen. But remember that throughout this process, it's not so much about over-adapting. It's not so much about doing whatever they want. The whole process is about what works for you. It's not about them. It's not about the relationship. Remember that throughout this process, it's really about choosing yourself. If you find it helpful, let me know in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe and like to support me, give me more exposure. I'll see you next time. Take care.